Ethan Ward had never been one to chase glory. He lived quietly on the edges of human space, traveling from one orbital station to another, fixing broken ships and doing small repairs for credits. For him, life was simple. He liked it that way. But even in the quiet, he felt the pull of the stars, an unspoken curiosity that sometimes led him into places he shouldn't be. It was during one of these routine journeys, piloting his small patched-up freighter across the Andromeda trade belt, that he noticed something unusual. On the edge of a decaying moon, a bright glint of metal flickered among the shadows of craters. At first he thought it was debris, the remains of a derelict cargo ship, but as he approached, the shape resolved itself into a sleek, unfamiliar craft. Its design was elegant, alien, yet practical, far beyond anything he had seen in human space. Curiosity sparked, and Ethan guided his ship closer. His sensors indicated life signs. 2, maybe 3, weak, scattered, but definitely alive. Someone was in trouble. He didn't hesitate. That was the kind of thing humans sometimes did, even without reward. He landed his freighter near the alien ship, careful not to cause more damage. The vacuum of space hummed with silence, broken only by the hiss of his suit's life support system. Inside the craft, he found her. A woman, or something like a woman, humanoid in form but unmistakably alien. Her skin was a soft silver blue and her eyes glimmered like polished gemstones. She was unconscious, her ship damaged, systems failing. He checked the control panel. The reactor core was unstable and would fail in minutes if left untouched. Ethan worked quickly. His hands moved with practiced precision, opening panels, rerouting power, stabilizing the core. Sparks flew, systems rebooted, and the ship's lights flickered back to life. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open to reveal confusion and fear. "You helped me?" she asked, her voice melodic, carrying a resonance that Ethan had never heard in any human language. Somehow, though, he understood her. "I guess you could say that," he replied, brushing his hands off. "Your ship's reactor was about to blow. Figured I'd stop it before it did." She studied him carefully, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Why? Why would a human risk themselves for me? For a stranger?" Ethan shrugged. "Sometimes you just help. Doesn't have to have a reason." He smiled faintly. "Call it a favor." She looked at him as if the concept was foreign. For a moment, the hum of her ship was the only sound between them. Then she spoke again, softer this time. "A favor. You leave nothing in return?" "Nothing," Ethan said, stepping back toward his ship. "Just fixing your mess. Happens every day." Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something like it. Then she moved with surprising speed, overriding the ship's autopilot. "You will not leave," she said. "Not yet," Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I can leave now. Your ship's fixed. No harm done." "No," she said firmly. "I insist. I must understand. Humans are rarely like this." Ethan chuckled quietly. "Well, lucky you. You found one that is." Despite himself, he stayed. They talked, slowly, carefully, because her language, though understandable, carried shades of meaning he had never encountered. She told him she was Seraphine Kalara, heir to a powerful alien empire known as the Valorian Dominion. She spoke of her duties, her people, her responsibilities. Ethan shared his own life, though briefly. A freighter pilot, a repairman, a man who liked quiet and didn't care for wealth or status. As they talked, a strange bond formed. Seraphine had never met anyone who acted without expectation, and Ethan had never met anyone who held so much power and yet seemed fragile, human in her own way. Hours passed, though in space it was hard to measure time. Finally, Ethan checked his own ship, ready to leave. "I should go," he said. "You'll be fine now. Your systems are stable." Seraphine's eyes softened. "Ethan, you have done more than fix a ship. You have given me hope. I will not forget this." "I wouldn't expect you to," Ethan replied, smiling. "I'm not here to be remembered. Just consider it a favor." With that, he climbed into his freighter and prepared to depart. The stars stretched endlessly before him, and he felt the familiar pull of open space. But even as he left, a strange feeling lingered, that somehow this moment, this simple act would matter more than he realized. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan returned to his routine. He didn't hear from Seraphine again. Perhaps he wouldn't. Perhaps that was how favors worked, done and forgotten. Yet far across the galaxies, Seraphine did not forget. She returned to her people, Her mind filled with thoughts of the human who helped her without expectation, who treated her not as royalty, but as a fellow being. She began to change. Decisions she had made from fear or obligation now carried a hint of compassion. She saw the cracks in her empire, the lack of humanity among her advisors, and she remembered Ethan's simple bravery, his quiet courage. He had left her ship without fanfare, without reward, without ambition. Yet somehow in that small act, he had shown her something her empire had long forgotten, that one being could make a difference without claiming power. And in the quiet moments, when she looked at the stars and wondered about the vast unknown, Seraphine thought of him, the human who did a favor and left. Little did either of them know that one act, so small, so simple, would ripple across empires, across galaxies, and change the course of history. Because in a universe ruled by power and strategy, there was something unpredictable about a human, something that no empire, no advanced technology, no political maneuver could account for. Human kindness, ingenuity, and courage. Ethan had only done what felt natural, yet he had unknowingly sown the seeds of connection, trust, and admiration that would grow far beyond his understanding. And far away, in the gleaming halls of Valorian command ships and palaces, Seraphine began to quietly wonder if she could ever repay the favor. Not with wealth, not with gifts, but in a way that mattered most, by changing herself, by allowing the human to leave a mark on her empire. For now, though, it was enough to remember him. A stranger in the dark void of space, a man who did what few would dare, helped without reason and left without expectation. Months had passed since Ethan Ward had fixed the alien ship and vanished into the stars. Life for him had returned to its quiet rhythm. Orbital Station Nivra 9, a bustling hub on the edge of human space, had become his temporary home. He spent his days repairing freighters, recalibrating navigation systems, and delivering supplies. He liked the quiet, liked the simplicity, and liked that no one asked questions about him or the past. But while he moved through his days as if nothing had changed, the universe had not forgotten. Far across the galaxies, in the heart of the Valorian Dominion, Lady Seraphine Kalara could not forget. She remembered the human with piercing blue eyes, the freighter pilot who had fixed her failing ship without expectation, without hesitation. The memory of his calm confidence, his quiet courage, and his simple smile lingered in her mind like a melody she could not place. Seraphine had returned to the corridors of power, where advisors and nobles schemed endlessly, and decisions were weighed in credits and contracts. Yet nothing felt the same. In the middle of her empire, she felt a strange emptiness, a question she could not answer. Who is this human, and why did he matter so much? She began a search. Not a casual one, but a determined, calculated effort using all her influence. Her agents combed through human trade routes, orbital stations and freighter logs tracing the faint signature of his ship, following whispers of a skilled repairman who appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Ethan, meanwhile, had no idea he was being sought. His life continued in the comfortable rhythm of routine, punctuated only by occasional boredom or the hum of his freighter's engines. He had never thought of his act as heroic. It was merely a human thing to do and to help. Yet that simple human instinct had become a ripple in an ocean of galactic politics. One evening, as Ethan worked in the docking bay, a sleek black vessel appeared in the station's observation window. It was unlike any human ship he had seen, elegant, angular, and humming with quiet power. The docking bay doors opened and the alien ship slid inside, almost like it had been part of the station all along. From the ship, a figure emerged. Silver blue skin, glowing eyes, and a presence that seemed to command attention without words. Ethan froze. "Seraphine Kalara," he said, his voice low. "I didn't expect you." She inclined her head slightly, a faint smile playing on her lips. "And yet here I am," she replied. "I have been searching for you." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "You've been looking for me?" "I must understand," she said. "I must understand the human who helped me without seeking reward. Why did you do it? Why did you leave?" Ethan leaned against a nearby console, shrugging. "Like I said before, it was just a favor. Happens every day." Her eyes searched his face. "Every day? And yet not every day does someone risk themselves for another, without thought of gain." Ethan smirked faintly. Maybe humans are strange like that. The two of them fell into an uneasy silence. Around them, the station hummed with life. Traders haggling, engineers working on cargo ships, and freighters departing for distant colonies. Yet in that moment, all of it faded into the background. Two beings from different worlds stood face to face, tied together by a single act of kindness that neither fully understood. Days passed. Seraphine remained on the station, observing human life closely. She watched as Ethan interacted with others. He helped an elderly mechanic lift a crate, offered directions to a lost traveler, and joked with children who ran along the corridors. She saw a pattern. Humans, unlike Valorians, acted with heart, creativity, and a strange sense of chaos that made life unpredictable and beautiful. She began asking questions of her advisors, carefully and indirectly. "What makes humans different?" she would ask. No one could answer her fully. They saw humans as primitive, unpredictable, often reckless. Yet she had seen something else: courage, selflessness, and ingenuity. Ethan, for his part, tried to ignore the growing presence of the alien heiress in his life. He went about his work, repaired ships, and kept routines. Yet sometimes he found himself glancing at her, noticing the way she observed life, curious, questioning, learning. It was not just her beauty that struck him, though she was undeniably striking. It was her intensity, her intelligence, and the way she seemed genuinely fascinated by ordinary human behavior. One day, a crisis occurred on the station. A freighter had lost control near the docking bay, its thrusters failing, and it was about to collide with other ships. Panic spread among the human crew. Without thinking, Ethan jumped into action. He guided the freighter's controls remotely, calculated trajectories, and maneuvered it safely away from danger. Within minutes, the potential disaster was averted. Seraphine watched silently, her admiration growing. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but in moments of crisis they displayed ingenuity that no Valorian could match. No complex algorithm, no careful calculation, could replicate the instinctive creativity of a human mind under pressure. After the incident, she approached him. "You saved lives again," Ethan shrugged. "Like I said, just doing what's right. Someone had to act." She studied him carefully. "And you do not seek reward?" "Recognition?" "No," he said simply. "That's not why I do it." Her expression softened. For the first time in her life, Seraphine felt something unfamiliar. Respect, yes, but also curiosity, even warmth. The human who did not care for power or fame had something she could not ignore. Over the next few weeks, they spent more time together. She learned human habits, stories, and emotions. He learned a bit about the Valorian Dominion, though he rarely asked about politics. They shared meals, repaired ships together, and occasionally floated outside the station in maintenance pods, staring at the stars. Ethan showed her how humans celebrated small victories: the repair of a freighter, the successful delivery of cargo, even a simple sunset from the station's observation deck. And with each shared moment, something changed. Seraphine began to see not just a man, but the embodiment of human qualities she had never truly understood. Kindness without expectation, courage without arrogance, and a quiet strength that inspired loyalty. Ethan, too, felt the pull of her presence. He did not seek love, power, or recognition, yet he found himself drawn to her curiosity, her intelligence, and her quiet determination. There was something human in her fascination with humanity, something he could respect and even admire. One evening, they stood together on the observation deck, watching the stars stretch endlessly across the blackness of space. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "why humans are the way they are?" Ethan shrugged. "Sometimes. But I think it's simple. We care, that's all. Maybe we overcomplicate things sometimes, but in the end we care." She looked at him, eyes reflecting starlight. "I have seen many beings, many empires, many rulers. None have shown what you show. Simply by existing." Ethan laughed softly. "Guess I'm lucky. Or maybe you just notice things most people miss." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps. But I will not forget this. Or you, Ethan Ward. You have changed something inside me, something I cannot ignore." Ethan looked out at the stars, his expression quiet. "I just did a favor," he said. Didn't think it would mean anything more than that. Yet in truth it already had. Unseen by him, his simple human act had begun a chain reaction, a ripple that would stretch across galaxies, influencing decisions, alliances, and even empires. For Seraphine, the search had ended, but the journey had only begun. She had found the human who showed her what it meant to act without expectation, and in the quiet spaces between stars she began to wonder, could a human, someone so small in the vastness of space, ever truly shape the future of an empire? For now, though, she was content to watch, learn, and understand. The human had done a favor and left. But that favor had left a mark on her people, and on the galaxy in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and in that vast, silent expanse, two beings from different worlds began a connection that would not fade. One human, one alien, each carrying the weight of their worlds, each learning from the other. And somewhere deep in the heart of that connection, the galaxy itself began to shift, quietly, without fanfare, without violence, guided only by the courage, kindness, and ingenuity of a single human. Ethan Ward had grown used to Seraphine's presence. Though unexpected at first, her stay on orbital station Nivra 9 had become a quiet rhythm in his life. She watched him work, asked questions about humanity, and occasionally offered insights into her own world. But life for Ethan remained simple: repairs, deliveries, and the freedom to come and go as he pleased. One afternoon, as he finished fixing the power core of a human cargo freighter, Seraphine approached him. She wore her usual flowing robes of silver and blue, and her eyes carried the calm determination of someone used to commanding empires. "Ethan," she began, her voice steady yet soft, "I have come to offer you something. A position of influence, a place beside me in my empire." Ethan wiped his hands on a rag, glancing at her. "A position? I'm just a repairman. Why would I want that?" "Because you have shown qualities rare in any leader: courage, creativity, and the ability to act without selfishness," she said. "I would have you by my side, not just as an advisor but as my equal. Together we could shape the future of my people and even the galaxy." Ethan leaned against the hull of the freighter, feeling the familiar hum of the ship beneath his hands. "I don't want power," he said plainly. "I fix things. I help people. That's enough for me. I'm not looking to rule anything." Seraphine's expression shifted slightly, a mixture of surprise and curiosity. In her world, humans rarely refused such offers. Power was the currency of respect, and no one with the chance to claim it would ever turn it down. Yet here he was, calmly refusing, as if the concept of authority was meaningless. "Do you not wish to change things?" she asked gently. "Do you not see the potential? With your mind and your courage, we could prevent suffering, guide entire systems, and shape history." "I see it," Ethan replied. "But doing it isn't about being in charge. It's about helping where you can and knowing when to step back. That's how humans do it. We care more about the act than the reward." Seraphine studied him, trying to understand. His answer felt almost philosophical, yet it carried a weight she could not ignore. In a galaxy where strategy and ambition ruled, here was a human who acted purely from heart and instinct. Days passed, and Seraphine continued to observe. She saw Ethan interact with the station's inhabitants, human, alien, and otherwise. When a young trader accidentally dropped a crate of supplies, Ethan was there in an instant, helping pick it up and offering a joke to ease the embarrassment. When a mechanic struggled with a stubborn engine part, Ethan patiently guided him, showing a method to fix it without taking credit. Every action, small or large, revealed something about humanity that Seraphine found remarkable. Humans did not always follow rules. They did not always calculate risks perfectly, and they often acted on impulse. Yet in that chaos there was brilliance, creativity, empathy, and courage that could not be measured by algorithms or decreed by law. One evening, the station experienced a sudden solar flare. The electrical systems of many ships began to fail, and panic spread through the corridors. Ethan moved quickly, coordinating repair teams, redirecting power, and even personally repairing several failing systems. By the time the flare subsided, not a single ship had been damaged. Seraphine watched him work, her admiration deepening. You save without thinking," she said. "No strategy, no reward, just action." Ethan looked at her, shrugging. "Someone had to do it. Someone always has to," she smiled faintly. "And yet your action changes more than you know. Even I feel it. You make me question how I lead, how I decide, how I treat others." Ethan shook his head. "I don't want to change anyone, I just act when it matters." But Seraphine had begun to see the truth. The human she had rescued had become more than a stranger. He was a teacher, not by intention but by example. In every choice, every gesture, every quiet act of bravery, he showed her something her empire had long forgotten. That leadership was not about command or control, but about empathy, courage, and integrity. The weeks on the station brought new challenges. A human colony nearby faced a malfunction in its life support system, and the station was called to assist. Seraphine offered to join the mission, insisting that Ethan accept her resources, her ships, and her influence. Ethan refused politely. "I'm helping them, not taking command," he said. "You could prevent mistakes before they happen," she pressed. "You could guide them more efficiently with my technology." "I can guide with what I know," Ethan said. "That's enough. I've learned to work with what's in front of me, not what I wish I had." "That's what humans do." Seraphine nodded slowly. She realized she could not force him. And yet, she could follow, learn, and perhaps understand. The mission was tense. Ethan moved with precision, improvising when systems failed and quickly finding solutions where others saw only danger. Seraphine watched and learned. For every technical problem, there was a human solution, sometimes messy, sometimes imperfect, but effective. By the time the colony's life support systems were stabilized, Seraphine's admiration had grown into something more. She could not deny the feeling that the human had changed her perception, not just of leadership, but of life itself. During the return journey, she finally spoke her thoughts aloud. "Ethan, I am beginning to understand. Humans, you think differently. You act differently. And perhaps, you teach differently even without trying." Ethan smiled, a small, tired smile. "I just do what I can. Maybe it looks like teaching. Maybe it just is." The two of them stood side by side in the observation deck, watching the stars drift past. Seraphine reflected on the weeks she had spent with him, on the quiet courage he displayed, and on the refusal to take power even when offered. "You have said no to what most would desire," she said softly. "Power, influence, recognition, why?" Ethan leaned against the railing, staring at the glittering expanse. "Because power changes people. I don't want to change, and I don't want to see others change just because of me. I help where I can when it matters, and then I step back. That's enough for me." She studied him in silence, her mind racing. Here was a human who defied the rules of the galaxy, who acted without ambition, who displayed courage and kindness in equal measure, and yet he remained humble, almost invisible in the grand scheme of empires and politics. Seraphine realized she was learning something profound. Humans, in their simplicity, held a power the Valorians could never measure, a power of empathy, ingenuity, and heart. And Ethan, the human who had done a favor and left, embodied it all. By the time the station's rotation brought them close to the outer rim again, Seraphine made a decision. She would remain close to him, not to command or coerce, but to learn, to observe, and to understand humanity through his example. Ethan, for his part, accepted her presence with quiet tolerance. He did not seek her attention, yet he did not push her away. Their bond was unspoken but growing, founded on respect, curiosity, and a shared understanding that sometimes actions mattered more than words. As the stars stretched endlessly outside, Seraphine thought of the future. There were threats looming beyond the outer rim, rival empires and factions that could disrupt peace. But she also saw potential. Potential not just in her people, but in humans, in their unpredictable creativity and bravery. And Ethan? He remained the same, quiet, capable, selfless human. Yet in his refusal to take power, in his simple courage, he had already begun to reshape her perception of the galaxy. Perhaps, she thought, the galaxy does not need rulers who seek power. Perhaps it needs humans like him. For now, though, the mission was complete, the colony safe, and the stars stretched endlessly before them. Seraphine had found the human she had been searching for, and in doing so, she had found a new understanding. That power and leadership could exist without ambition, that courage could exist without violence, and that one human could inspire change in ways an empire never could. Ethan did not know the effect he had, and perhaps he never would. But through his simple acts, his refusals, and his unwavering humanity, he had become more than a man fixing ships. He had become a teacher, a guide, and a symbol, not of power, but of human potential, and in the quiet hum of the freighter, As stars drifted past the observation deck, the galaxy itself seemed to shift slightly, quietly, imperceptibly, guided by the courage, kindness, and integrity of one human being. The galaxy was never truly quiet. Even as Ethan Ward returned to his simple routine on orbital station Nivra 9, far across the stars, tensions stirred in the Valorian Dominion. Rival factions within the Empire had begun challenging Lady Seraphine Kalara's authority, exploiting political rivalries and the weaknesses of her advisors. For the first time, Seraphine felt the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on her. She had risen to power, but leadership was more than titles and control. It was decisions that affected millions of lives, sometimes in an instant. And for all her intelligence and training, she knew her empire was fragile. It was during a routine council meeting that the first real signs of crisis became undeniable. Reports came in. A neighboring system loyal to the Dominion had begun rebelling, influenced by a rival faction seeking to destabilize the galaxy. Communications were being cut, trade routes were blocked, and tensions rose faster than anyone could predict. Seraphine's advisors debated endlessly, offering strategies of coercion, threats, and military force. But she could see the cracks in every plan. Every strategy they suggested relied on control and intimidation, not understanding, not compassion. She thought of Ethan, the human who had done her a favor, who had refused power, who had shown her that leadership could be more than force. Perhaps she realized he could help, not by commanding armies, but by seeing solutions she and her council could not. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I need your help. Not as a commander, not as a ruler, but as a human, someone who sees beyond strategy and politics." Ethan looked at her, calm yet attentive. "I help where I can. But you need to know, I don't command armies. I don't seek to rule. I only try to solve problems." "That is exactly why I need you," Seraphine replied. "You think differently. You act differently. You see what others do not. Can you help me stabilize the situation without unnecessary conflict?" Ethan nodded. He may not have sought power, but he had learned to act in critical moments. And this was one of those moments. The first step was observation. Ethan reviewed reports from the rebellious system, spoke to local leaders, and observed the patterns of trade and communication. Unlike the Valorian advisors, he did not immediately suggest force or punishment. He looked for human needs, for the gaps between what people were promised and what they received. Slowly, a plan began to form, one that did not rely on intimidation, but on understanding. Ethan proposed small, immediate solutions, restoring broken communication lines, delivering essential supplies, and sending trusted emissaries to speak directly with the local population. Seraphine's advisors were skeptical. "This will take too long," one argued. "The factions will act before your human solutions can make a difference." Ethan shook his head. "Sometimes the fastest way to peace is patience. People respond to care, not fear. Fix the problems that matter to them first, and loyalty will follow naturally." Reluctantly, Seraphine agreed to implement Ethan's approach. She dispatched teams under his guidance, following his advice rather than her council's usual tactics. The results were astonishing. Within days, the rebellion began to wane. Local leaders, impressed by the attention and care, cooperated willingly. Trade routes reopened, communication systems were restored, and people began to trust the Dominion again, not out of fear, but because someone had listened, understood, and acted with their best interests at heart. Seraphine watched, amazed. The human she had rescued months ago, the man who had refused power and status, had begun to reshape the very foundation of her empire without raising a single weapon. Yet the rival factions did not sit idle. They watched Ethan's influence grow and plotted to undermine him, fearing that a human who inspired loyalty could threaten their control. Political whispers reached Seraphine. Some advisors questioned whether she was allowing a foreigner too much sway over the Dominion. She confronted them with quiet authority. "Do you see what he has accomplished? He does not command, he does not coerce. He inspires, solves, and cares. That is leadership. And it works," the council murmured, but even the skeptics could not deny the evidence. The system stabilized, trade resumed, and public opinion shifted in favor of Seraphine's rule and Ethan's methods. Meanwhile, Ethan continued his work, moving from problem to problem. When a transport vessel malfunctioned and risked stranding settlers on a remote planet, he devised a temporary propulsion solution using spare parts. When a water purification system failed on a mining colony, he engineered a filter using local materials and simple mechanics. Every act, no matter how small, reinforced his reputation as a man who solved problems without force using ingenuity and heart. Seraphine observed him closely, learning from his methods. For every mechanical solution, he applied the same philosophy to people. Listen, understand, and act thoughtfully. She realized that this approach could be the key to a lasting peace in her empire, not power alone, but the careful application of intelligence, empathy, and human creativity. One night, as the station rotated quietly, Seraphine approached Ethan in the observation deck. The stars stretched infinitely beyond the glass, glittering like diamonds on black velvet. "You have changed more than this empire," she said softly. "You have changed me. I see now that power without care is hollow, and leadership without humanity is empty." Ethan looked at her, eyes calm. "I don't seek to change you. I only hope you see what's possible when you act with heart." "I do," she said, her voice steady, "and I will not forget it." As the days passed, the political pressure intensified. Rival factions tried to manipulate dissent, but Ethan's human solutions continued to work. He did not rely on orders or force, only observation, creativity, and empathy. Slowly, the Dominion began to understand that leadership could be different, more human, more inclusive, and more lasting. Through it all, Seraphine and Ethan grew closer. She admired his courage, his ingenuity, and his refusal to take power for himself. He admired her willingness to learn, to question, and to apply his ideas even in the face of skepticism. Together they became a team, not rulers and advisors, but two beings learning from each other, guiding an empire in ways no one could have predicted. The final test came when a neighboring empire launched a minor incursion, testing the Valorian Dominion's defenses. Traditional military strategies would have led to escalation and possible bloodshed. Ethan suggested an alternative, a demonstration of understanding and diplomacy. He personally led a delegation to negotiate with the intruding empire, using logic, empathy, and creative solutions rather than threats. Through careful dialogue, compromise, and demonstration of shared goals, the incursion was resolved peacefully. No ships were destroyed, no lives lost, and both empires emerged with stronger trade and communication links. Seraphine watched this unfold, heart swelling with pride. Here was a human, someone she had rescued on a small moon, who had not only saved her life but had saved her empire. His simple humanity, courage, ingenuity, and empathy had done what armies could not, brought stability and trust to a fragile galaxy. Later, as they returned to the station, she turned to him. "Ethan, I never thought a human could do so much. You have changed the course of my empire, perhaps the course of the galaxy." Ethan smiled faintly, modest as always. "I just fix what I can, the rest is up to the people." And yet in that quiet statement lay a profound truth. One human acting with integrity had reshaped an empire without violence, without ambition, simply by being human. As the stars stretched endlessly outside the observation deck, Seraphine realized that leadership, power, and change could exist without force. Humanity, in its simplicity and courage, had shown her a way to build a better empire, and perhaps a better galaxy. Ethan, unaware of the full impact he had, continued his work quietly. Yet everywhere he touched, life improved, systems stabilized, and people began to hope. The empire was no longer fragile. It was resilient, adaptable, and inspired, all because one human had dared to act with heart. For Seraphine, the lesson was clear. Power could be wielded by anyone, but true influence came from understanding, courage, and compassion. And Ethan, the man who did a favor and left, had shown her what it truly meant to lead. The galaxy, vast and uncertain, seemed a little brighter that night. One human had reminded the stars that even small acts of courage could echo across empires, shifting history quietly but profoundly. The galaxy had changed, slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly. The Valorian Dominion had begun to see a new kind of leadership, one that did not rely on fear, armies, or rigid control, but on understanding, empathy, and ingenuity. Ethan Ward had returned to his routines on orbital station Nivra 9, continuing his work as a repairman and problem solver. He had never sought glory, power, or recognition. He simply did what he could to help, to solve problems, and to make life better for those around him. And yet, the galaxy had taken notice. Lady Seraphine Kalara stood at her council chambers, her advisors surrounding her. But she no longer felt the tension and fear that had dominated the Empire. Thanks to Ethan, systems stabilized, disputes resolved, and trust restored across the stars. The people had begun to see the Valorian Dominion not as a rigid hierarchy, but as a protectorate that cared for them. Seraphine, one of her senior advisors, said cautiously, "There are discussions in the outer systems. They speak of the human, the one you brought into the council. They say he has guided decisions, solved crises, and inspired hope. Some even call him a king among humans." Seraphine's expression softened. She had known Ethan's influence was extraordinary, but she had never imagined it would reach such heights. "He is not a king," she said. "He is a human. He has done nothing but act with integrity, courage, and wisdom. That is enough." Yet the sentiment could not be contained. Across the Dominion, people began to celebrate the human who had shown that leadership could be compassionate, inventive, and humble. Children drew pictures of him helping others. Merchants told stories of his clever solutions. Officials shared tales of his calm courage in crises. Even rival factions could not deny his impact. Seraphine knew it was time. She needed to recognize what had been quietly shaping her empire, not as a gesture of authority, but as a recognition of truth. She sent a message to Ethan, asking him to meet her at the Central Palace on Valoria Prime. The capital world of the Dominion. Ethan arrived, stepping down from his freighter onto the gleaming halls of the palace. He felt out of place, as always. The grandeur, the polished corridors, the murmurs of courtiers. None of it mattered to him. He had never sought this, and he would not be swept into it blindly. "Ethan," Seraphine greeted him warmly, her silver blue eyes bright with purpose. "I have asked you here because I must show gratitude. Not for what you have done for me personally, but for what you have done for my people and for my empire." Ethan tilted his head, unsure. "Seraphine, I didn't do it for thanks. I just fixed what I could, helped where it mattered. That's all." "No," she said, stepping closer. "It is not all. You have changed the course of history. You have shown that one human, acting with heart, courage, and creativity, can achieve what empires could not. You have become a symbol, a beacon of hope for all, even among those who feared change." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Therefore I am naming you my co-regent. You will not command armies, but you will guide decisions. You will not take the throne, but you will shape the future of my people alongside me. You will be recognized for the human you are, and for the impact you have made." Ethan blinked, stunned. He had never wanted power. He had never sought recognition. Yet as he looked at Seraphine, he saw sincerity, trust, and admiration. This was not about control or ambition. It was about acknowledging the quiet, consistent force of goodness and intelligence he had always believed in. I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I never wanted this. I never wanted power. I just helped when it mattered." "That is why you are perfect for it," she said gently. "Leadership is not about ambition. It is about care, integrity, and courage. You have all three in abundance. Will you accept this role, not for power, but for the good of the galaxy?" Ethan took a deep breath. He thought of the moons he had traveled, the colonies he had helped, the people whose lives had improved because someone, sometimes himself, sometimes others, had acted with thought and care. "All right," he said finally. "I'll do it. But only to help. Not for glory, not for control, just to make things better where I can." Seraphine smiled, a warmth in her eyes that had nothing to do with status or title. "That is all I could ever ask." News of Ethan's acceptance spread quickly across the Dominion. Unlike the traditional rulers who demanded obedience, he was welcomed with admiration. People saw him not as a monarch, but as a symbol, a human who had shown that courage, creativity, and compassion were more powerful than armies or fear. Together, Seraphine and Ethan worked to stabilize the empire further. They improved trade routes, repaired failing colonies, and mediated disputes. Ethan's human perspective offered fresh solutions to old problems, and Seraphine's authority ensured they were implemented effectively. One day, while walking through the gardens of the palace, Seraphine turned to him. "You have done more than I ever imagined, Ethan. You have changed my empire, my people, and me. Ethan smiled, brushing a hand through his hair. I just did what felt right. You did the hard part, trusting me, letting me help. That I did, she said softly, and I will never forget it. Not you, not your courage, not your heart. Their bond had grown stronger than either expected. Though they came from different worlds, different species, and different experiences, they understood each other. Ethan had taught Seraphine about humanity. Seraphine had shown Ethan the impact one could have on a vast civilization. In the weeks that followed, the Dominion flourished. Rival factions were reconciled through diplomacy rather than war. Colonies once on the brink of rebellion thrived under the combined guidance of Seraphine and Ethan. And across the stars, humans and Valorians alike told stories of the human who did a favor and left, only to return, not for power, but to shape the galaxy with wisdom and courage. The final recognition came during a ceremonial gathering on Valoria Prime. Citizens from across the Dominion, representatives of distant colonies, and dignitaries from allied systems filled the central hall. Seraphine took the stage and addressed them. Today we honor not just a leader, but a human who has reminded us all what true courage and compassion mean. He sought no glory, no reward, yet his actions have reshaped our empire. He has shown that one being, acting with integrity, can change the course of history. Ethan stood beside her, quiet and humble, as the crowd erupted in applause. He felt awkward under the attention, yet there was a warmth in his chest, a quiet satisfaction that perhaps, in his own human way, he had made a difference. Seraphine reached for his hand. Ethan, my friend, my teacher, my co-regent, you have shown us all the power of being human. Will you continue to guide us as you always have, with courage, ingenuity, and heart? Ethan squeezed her hand gently. I will. Not for power, not for glory, but for what matters. The crowd cheered again, but Ethan only smiled quietly. He did not see himself as a king, though others did. He was simply a human who acted with heart, who did what was right when it mattered most. And in the vastness of space, that was more powerful than any crown. As the stars glittered beyond the palace windows, Seraphine looked at him with admiration and love. The human who did a favor and left had returned, not to take power, but to show the galaxy what it truly meant to lead. And in that quiet truth, the galaxy found hope. One human, simple and humble, had reminded countless worlds that courage, kindness, and ingenuity were the greatest forces in the universe. For Ethan Ward, it was never about being a king. It was about doing what was right. And yet, somehow, by doing so, he had become exactly that, a king in spirit, in action, and in the hearts of those he touched. The universe was vast, uncertain, and full of challenges. But with humans like Ethan, the stars seemed a little brighter, the future a little more hopeful, and the galaxy a place where one act of kindness could ripple through empires and change everything.